Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa ala man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin wa ba'd. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Brothers and sisters, the topic is one that's very interesting, and the question always comes up, specifically in terms of investing. People have bought actually shares in various marijuana companies in the past. The shares were at pennies a share almost, and the hope is that down the road that they would really become a source of vast wealth for those individuals who invested, subhanAllah. So the questions, I know there'll be many of them and they're frequently asked, but before I do get into the subject itself, I just want to begin with a basic introduction. This is what we call or look at as being some of the mazaya, or the, you can say, unique aspects of the Islamic faith. Now we have a guideline. It states, Al-Islamu salihun li kulli zamanin wa makan. That Islam is suitable for all times and places. Essentially, the guidelines within the framework of the Sharia, they can be used to look at any subject, any issue that comes up. No matter how advanced or how obscure, we can always find a reference for those things within the framework of the Sharia, which is essentially the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. These are guidelines, broad guidelines. Aside from these guidelines that we have within the Sharia that enable us to look at new things that come up in a way that would make us understand halal or haram, we also have various mechanisms within the Sharia at our disposal through which we can reach the hukum or ruling of new matters that arise. Specifically, the issue or the mechanism we can look at is al-qiyas, where we draw an analogy between something that was present during Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's time and what we have today. Through this mechanism, we're able to give a ruling to Bitcoin, for example. That was never present even, 10, 20 years ago. This was not, forget that, even a few years back, this was not even present. Yet we can easily find a hukum, a ruling for this in light of the framework that we have in the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Cannabis is no exception. We can easily find a hukum or ruling for it in light of that framework that we have, that is the Quran and the Sunnah of our beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now, before we give a hukum to something, I've got to clarify one point. This is very important. Sometimes I come across a brother, a sister, they will tell you, I feel this is haram. I feel this is haram. Right? And subhanAllah, when you come to argue or discuss or debate with a person who says, I feel something is haram, there's no two ways. There's no logical approach to that person's, ideology. You can't get to that person. Essentially, in Islam, there's no such thing as I feel this is haram, I feel this is halal. If someone proclaims something as halal or haram, you're then required to give evidence for your statement because you're talking on behalf of Allah. So essentially, when someone says this is halal, you say, I believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has proclaimed this to be lawful or proclaimed this to be unlawful, and so on and so forth. It's a very big issue. It's a responsibility put upon your shoulders, subhanAllah. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clarifies to us the method through which we should proceed when it comes to matters of halal and haram. قُلْ هَاتُوا بُرْهَانَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. Give us the evidence. If someone claims something to be halal or haram, provide the evidence as to why it is halal, why it is haram. The other thing is, sometimes we'll come across people who would say that, well, it should be halal because it's not mentioned in the Quran. Look at the Quran cover to cover. Look in the Sunnah of Rasulullah cover to cover. You will not find cannabis or marijuana mentioned anywhere. True, I agree, it's not mentioned, but then we have other mechanisms and guidelines that enable us to reach the hukum in those matters. So, it shouldn't be to either extreme. We should find a pathway in the middle whenever we discuss the issues that come up that are issues of contention, that I know people will be having a back and forth on. And let me just give you an example to clarify that point. When cigarette smoking first came up, this is back in the 50s or the 40s or 30s, whatever, When it first came up, when the ulama were asked of that era, what is the hukum of smoking? We're talking about the normal cigarettes, tobacco. There were actually three groups of scholars back then. The first, known as al-mutawaqqifun, those who did not have a clear indication as to whether this is haram or halal. They held their opinion, they pulled themselves out of this, and they said, you know what, we don't know what this is all about. When it becomes clearer to us, we will then give a hukum on this. Right? That was one approach the scholars had. There were others who said, well, it stinks, it's not nice, it's makruh. Right? And there were others who took a further extreme of saying it's haram or right. So there were three approaches basically back then. But when things became clear, and I'm talking about clear in the sense of the harm that cigarettes pose upon an individual, upon those around that individual. I mean, I don't think any two individuals would have an issue acknowledging that cigarette smoking is dangerous to your health. That's a given. So on account of that sure harm becoming completely crystal clear, the hukum then, from those three approaches, was more or less brought to only one opinion, that it's haram because of the harm it possesses or poses upon those who smoke it and those who are in the company of those who smoke, second-hand smoke. And the proof for this is in the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, la darar wa la dirar. Do not harm yourself or allow harm to extend to others. So that was the approach used. But then always, when something comes in, you'll have a knee-jerk reaction. That's not a problem. But as things become more clear, you'll find that the opinions become more, open. And easily, one can actually study them with more clarity. Now, there are many issues that have come up in this way. The thing that, before I proceed, I just want to make a point that, in matters of ijtihad, matters where there is a legitimate give and take, where there are two sides, two opinions, we're not going to come and point a finger of blame towards the other side and say, you know what, you don't agree with my opinion, therefore I cast you out of the folds of Islam. We don't do that. We can discuss logically, yes, argue in a way that's appropriate, but to go beyond those bounds, we should not. We should restrict ourselves, pull ourselves back, and limit ourselves to what's within the Quran. That means the method through which we discuss and debate. We limit ourselves with what we have in the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now that's the introduction of the topic. It's a very important one. Whenever we come across anything that appears to be new, novel, it's something that was never found in the past, never have it in your mind that there's no ruling for it. There's always a ruling for these things. One has simply to educate themselves, delve into the field of learning, and then they would find a hukum and ruling for those things that are up and coming. So we'll move on, and I'll introduce you to the main evidences used specifically in this area. We have four of them. Okay, 4 evidences that are used that you should all be aware of, specifically in the field of not food and drink, but food additives and edibles and drinks. As they proceed now, as we're going forward, we find more and more interesting things being proposed. I mean, if you look at they want to grow meat and whatnot, and these things, don't think they don't have a hukum. There is a hukum for them. We have these 4 narrations that really would clarify to us these new matters that arise today and beyond. So the first hadith I mentioned to you already, these are all authentic. The words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, la darar wa la dirar. Do not harm yourself or allow harm to extend to others. This is one of the qawa'id, or the rules, the general guidelines upon which the Sharia is based. We know that one of the aims of Sharia, this is important to note, the entire Sharia, everything, the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it has a higher purpose. That higher purpose we call maqasid al-Sharia, the aims and goals of the Sharia. These aims and goals of them are the primary objectives, which include the preservation of your faith, the preservation of your life, the preservation of your intellect, preservation of your family, and the preservation of your wealth. These are the higher goals and objectives of the Sharia. So everything within the Quran and Sunnah is aimed to preserving these things. That's why you'll find, for example, the command فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. Literally put, fear Allah as much as you can. Take it into a realm of practicality. This verse would mean that, let's say, you're unable to make wudu properly because of extreme cold and you fear that you will kill yourself. In that case, even though wudu is a compulsory, you can say condition for the prayers, you can put that aside for the sake of preserving your life. In fact, we have in the hadith, Prophet ﷺ was approached by one of the companions. This companion, he had a cut in his head, and he did not make he did not perform the ghusl that he should have when he had a wet dream. Instead, he used tayammum because he feared for his life, and Rasulullah ﷺ approved of what he did. So keep in mind always, we have these 5 primary objectives and goals. The entire deen, Quran and Sunnah together, aim to preserve these things. Okay? So here we have the first guideline, La darar wa la dirar. Do not harm yourself or allow harm to extend to others. The second hadith, that is a very important hadith, specifically in matters that we're unable to reach a hukum or ruling right away, we can have, you can say, an initial understanding of the topic at hand, and then later on discuss it further. This hadith is the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Da' ma yaribuka ila ma la yaribuk." Leave aside that which you're doubtful in to that which you're not doubtful in. So leave aside doubtful matters. That's the command of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So let's say you're unaware or unsure of the hukum of something. Khayran. You can call it a knee-jerk reaction. Pull away from it until it becomes clearer to you, the hukum or the harms, the benefits, all of that becomes clear to you afterwards. The third narration, which specifically relates to these issues, they're going to come up more and more. It's the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Naha Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam an kulli muskirin wa mufattir. Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam forbade one from any intoxicant, and mufattir is what would basically, it's the opposite of an intoxicant, but it slows you down, basically. Really puts you in a condition where you're unable to really function as you would normally, slows your entire system down, puts you in a situation where you're completely relaxed, unable to proceed with your life as you would normally. The fourth hadith, kullu muskirin haram wa kullu muskirin khamr. Every intoxicant is unlawful, and every intoxicant is khamr. This is important. We'll mention a hadith a bit afterwards, inshallah, that discusses this last hadith a bit more. So these are the 4 that we'll be using in the realm of this topic. Now, before I get to the topic of cannabis, and since this is the topic of the hour, so to say, let's look at the mechanism of qiyas. This is a very important mechanism through which we achieve or ascertain rulings, with things that we have not witnessed in the past that are up and coming now. We can give it a hukum through this approach, al-qiyas. So al-qiyas, let's give you an example to make it clear. Let's give you heroin, for example. Heroin, the reason I'm giving that is that I don't think any 2 people would deny that it's harmful to your body, right? It clouds your judgment, blinds your intellect. You're unable to function properly in life. And the thing is that we have to, when looking at qiyas, we look at what Allah has prohibited outright in the Quran. We know Allah has prohibited outright in the Quran khamr. Although khamr is interpreted in the English as whiskey and alcohol, it's more than that. Khamr is an intoxicant, so it could be a liquid. It could be a substance that's, absorbed through the skin, ingested. So it's anything. Khamr is basically, as the scholars, interpret it as, ma khamar al-aql. Any substance that would blind one's judgment, impair one's judgment, and basically make them unable to see things as they would had they not taken that substance. So here, we look at the reason why alcohol or intoxicants are deemed haram. It's, as I said, it impairs judgment. And this is what the scholars have mentioned regarding. This is what we call al-illah. The reason as to why something has been deemed unlawful in Islam. So once we're able to ascertain the actual reason behind the prohibition of this substance in the Quran, in Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we then look at the item in question, heroin. Does it share that illah, the reason for prohibition found in alcohol? Is it present in heroin as well? I'm asking you, does it blind your judgment? Does it make you impair your judgment? Does it make you unable to think, especially if one is addicted to this and they're just trying to get the next dose? They're kind of they'll do anything to get, to that. They'll commit crimes. And we've all seen, I'm sure all of us have seen individuals who are in that circle, that abusive circle, subhanAllah, where they're just living to basically take that next shot, Allah musta'an. Now, although we discuss it like this, there is more to it, brothers and sisters. I mean, this is where the field of Islam, it interacts with the field of medicine and science. Because for us to go further now and look at the hukum or ruling of something like this, like heroin, we've got to go and ask, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. We ask people of knowledge in this field to enlighten us. What is the nature of this substance? What does it do to the body? As a scholar in Islam, you wouldn't know this. You rely upon the expertise of those who are aware of this. You basically will build the hukum, Islamically speaking, based on what they have informed you or what they will inform you about that substance. So we look now, we call the alcohol or the khamr mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah, we call this al-asl. What is initially found in the text of the Quran and Sunnah. Al-far', the secondary matter, that is a new matter that we're trying to give a ruling to. This is heroin in this case. And then we have al-illa, al-jami'a baynahuma. The reason as to why the first one is prohibited is the reason found in the second as well. And then finally we come to the hukum or the ruling. If the two match or are a near match in that illa, then they would share the hukum or the ruling as well. So essentially, since Allah has prohibited alcohol, and we know the reason as to why it was prohibited, and if this reason is found in heroin, then in that case, heroin would share the ruling of alcohol. This is how this mechanism works. But like I said, it will not work unless we have a clear understanding of those issues we're discussing. As a scholar in Islam, we can never reach it ourselves. We rely heavily upon the research and the works of people in the field. Now you can do that yourself. Actually, nowadays, with all that is found online, you can easily access, reputable medical research papers, scientific papers that speak of the dangers and you can say the side effects of taking these medications. Sorry, not medications. These what do you call these substances. And from there, you can build, or you can basically get to a point where you have an initial assessment of that substance, and then you can have the steps of qiyas whereby you can reach a ruling in relation to that. Is this clear, the process? Is this mechanism clear, everyone? Fine. Now, moving a bit forward over here now to the issue of cannabis. I'm not going to go into the cannabis in the same way. I want to first prove to you all that cannabis is not a new issue. Cannabis was known, and it's written cannabis in Arabic, by the way. It was used, I'm talking about in the year 658 Hijrah. It's actually a book, a very interesting book. I searched for it, you can't find it, so don't search for it yourselves. It's called over here, السوامح الأدبية في المدائح القنبية. So basically, romantic poetry describing the beauties of cannabis. That's the name of the book, okay? So here, in this book, there are many stories of how certain fuqara were really indulging in the cannabis lifestyle, what they were doing. But keep in mind, if it was present at that time, you will ask the question, how come the ulama did not speak about it at that time? We don't have in the form of that any specific reference to cannabis. You don't have it. But it was present during those eras. They were it's a plant. Look, the plant is a plant. It'll be found regardless in nature. It didn't just pop up today in this era. It was there, ever since. Those who knew of it, knew of it. Those who did not know it, did not know of it. But the reality is, in order for scholars of that caliber, the four imams and others like them, to speak of something like this, it would have to have become an epidemic among people, right? If it's a very small matter, a few pockets here and there in the society that are doing it, and numbers are negligible. They wouldn't spend their time studying and discussing these matters because there are more important matters that they were discussing and looking into. They would leave guidelines in general, but as to speak of this subject in specific, they did not. Because it was not an epidemic. And believe me, if this was the case, that there was a legalization going on during the Abbasid Khilafah or the Umayyad Khilafah, you would definitely have all the scholars on board looking into this thing, specifically dissecting it from point to point and giving a hukum afterwards. But that never happened once again. It's just a matter of a few pockets, very small. We're talking about individuals you can count on your hands who are taking this, who are known with it. So the story goes, brothers and sisters. This is from the book, I just mentioned to you the name, الصوانح الأدبية في المدائح أو في المدائح القنبية. Al-Hasan ibn Muhammad said over here that there was a sheikh by the name of Sheikh Haidar. This sheikh, he lived of course during the Abbasid Khilafah, and he was among the fuqara. The word faqir or fuqara is a reference to certain Sufi sects who deprive their bodies of the basic essentials and needs. So they will not take food or drink as one should in order to keep themselves upright and keep themselves healthy. They would deprive themselves of food and drink to basically spend more time worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, be in ruku' and sujood and whatnot. So this Shaykh Haidar, he was, as I say, كثير الرياضة والمجاهدة قليل الاستعمال للغذاء. So he was among those who really spent a lot of time in riyadh, spending time worshipping Allah, practicing certain practices, and did not really have much need for food. And basically he survived on the most little amount of food you can imagine. Because of that, a person would feel sick, nauseous, you would not have the strength to continue on with your day. So as he was passing, because he was living up in a higher area, as he was passing by, on his pathway to go back to his home, he noticed that the plants, it was a day that there was no wind in. There was basically a windless day. The plants, when there's no wind, it will sit, fall to one side or stand on itself without anything fluttering in the air. He said out of all these plants, there was one plant in specific that caught his attention. This plant appeared to as if move or to stay afloat in a way unlike any of the other plants. So instinctively he came and took a few leaves of that tree, he put it into his mouth, and he began chewing on those leaves, and suddenly he found within himself a bit of energy, more than what he had in the past. So it says here that he thought that this is a God-given gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because he was so exhausted and tired, and when he took this plant, he was amazed with the power it had within it to give him that strength to continue. So he brought some of his students and he said, listen, this is a God-given gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He told him, Sheikh, this is the plant of al-qanab. This is cannabis, ya Sheikh. The Sheikh said, no harm in that. We can use it for ourselves and we can form our close circle of it only. So, at the time, like I said, it was only contained within pockets, like himself, who knew of it, who's going to put a foreign plant in your mouth? I mean, this is something very odd. But then the person did that. He put it in his mouth and he felt whatever he felt. And they were taking this plant, him and his followers were taking this plant. And it's mentioned over here as well that when he died, this is all recorded in this book, documented and historically speaking, and it's been attested to by different historians. So here we have, in this book it says, when he died, in the area that he was buried, his followers were known to take the cannabis and use it in the way that their sheikh would use it. And what he said over here, this is one of his statements. إِنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى قَدْ خَصَّكُمْ بِسِرِّ هَذَا الْوَرَقِ. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has selectively chosen you, my followers, with the secret of this plant. So basically, keep it to yourselves. And use it to enable yourselves to get that energy to perform the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So keep in mind, they're using cannabis for a reason here. To get stoned? They're using cannabis here to get a bit of energy to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't think anyone takes cannabis today with that intention to get energy to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So before anyone says, well, he's a sheikh, I'll take by his view, no. Because no one does what he's doing, subhanallah al-musta'an. So we have here The Sheikh, he passed on, and like I said, his students were they were using this plant afterwards. So it was something known back then, and we have likewise in the records of Ibn Sina, who was a renowned doctor, within that era as well. He had documented in his works of medicine certain practices that indicated the use of qanab, or cannabis as well, not for recreational use. This was used in very measured amounts within certain medicinal concoctions. That's it. Not to be used independently, but rather in a certain way, in a certain format, and that was it. Now, aside from this historical look at cannabis, we have to look now at the nature of cannabis. What is it all about? We have, before I get to that actually, there has been a lot of talk on the research that has been conducted for the past years about cannabis. They say the research is not pure in the sense that it's been geared or pushed towards one side, and it's ignored many of the benefits that are found in cannabis. So that has been said. So we have to really look and investigate what is the nature of this drug, of this substance. And when we understand the nature of cannabis, what it's all about, what it does, and this is once again not mashayikh or scholars, they depend upon the medical and scientific scholars to enlighten us in terms of the nature of this substance. We have, and this is, you can find the research yourselves. These are more, I would not look at the old research papers from the 80s and 90s. That doesn't really, people question those directly. I'm looking more in the past 4 or 5 years, where medicinal marijuana has already been legalized, where they're researching and looking at the side effects of this substance. So one thing that has come up in those research papers is that the potency of marijuana is rising. And this study, done in 2014, it said they took extracts, samples of marijuana, and they found that the THC level were highly more than what it was in the past. So it's exceeded. At times the marijuana may be laced with something else too at the same time. You wouldn't be aware of that. Someone taking this would then harm themselves, subhanAllah. So the potency is rising. That's affirmed scientifically speaking. And we also have, in terms of now the other research studies and papers here, it says that there is something known as marijuana use disorder. Especially with those who take a lot of it, it can form into a severe addiction. And the numbers in the States, this is when the study was done a few years back, it's like by 2014. It says that the number of cases associated with the dependence on this substance is rising in the States, where people are they become addicted basically to this. So it says over here in 2015, 4 million people in the States met the diagnostic criteria for a marijuana use disorder. And the numbers are rising as well. So there's that dependence upon this substance, aside from it being potent and harmful to your health, in light of this study, because the more potent it becomes, the more that we don't know what it will do eventually. We're right now in a stage of exploring and figuring out, and it's quite scary, because people who take this excessively, we're unaware of what it would do to your body in the long run, subhanAllah. We have as well over here that it acts as a depressant, it acts as a stimulant, it acts as a hallucinogen. So these are other modern research papers talking about what it may do to the body itself. Now, there was one paper that I looked at. This is quite an interesting study. And this is a bit older, but they say all the way to 2010. The study was done for 20 years, and they conclude that marijuana use carries some of the risks as alcohol use. This is important. So the risks of marijuana, for those who regularly take this, and this is 20 years worth of studies, the people who take it will have the same risk as alcohol users, such as an increased risk of accidents, dependence, psychosis, and other medical issues, Allah musta'an. Would experience psychotic symptoms, disordered thinking, and they say also over here that there's an increased risk of heart attack as well for those who take it excessively. And they define what excessive use is. So, I mean, the more that you look at it, the more that we will find this data sticking out. You can't just dismiss it completely and say, well, it's nothing. And by the way, just because marijuana has become legal in Canada does not mean that it's not harmful to your body. Some brothers said, well, they made it legal, there's no big deal about it. No, there is. Because back in the time, talking about, when alcohol was prohibited here in Canada, you had the era of prohibition, both in the States and in Canada. There was legislation that prohibited, the sale of alcohol. People would do it, underground and sell it, in a way that would not be detected by the government. What had happened afterwards was, subhanAllah, as the pressure grew, the legislation changed, and the era of prohibition became, or was non-existent. And what was once prohibited was then deemed lawful. And subhanAllah, there have been research studies, the weirdest of which, I don't know how this is even scientific, subhanAllah, where they were speaking for the longest time of the benefit of red wine. And, this was, I read it multiple times in the CBC, on CNN, different news channels where they spoke of the benefit, the health benefits of taking red wine regularly. They mentioned when you should take it and how you should take it, and it's healthy for your health. And they said the reason there's a substance within the red wine called resveratrol, which is very good for your health and whatnot. And then subhanAllah, not too long ago, I believe it's a year ago, maybe a bit more than that, but not more than 2. So within the 2-year frame, a study came out that negates all the previous research studies, that it actually is very bad for your health, and there's a risk of heart attack, and I don't know what else, and subhanAllah. The lady on the radio, this is the funny thing, CBC, Edmonton, and we get that in Fort Mac, so she is saying, I don't know who to believe. Can I trust scientists anymore or not? Because we were told for the longest time that this was good for your health, but now it no longer is. So the reality over here is that those studies, you have to question them, because when they dissected that study, they said the reason they were saying that red wine is good for your health is that they compared the American population to the French population, and they said the French population has less sickness and heart disease, and they could have said they ate more cheese, they ate more apples, I don't know, they ate more chocolate, but no, they said it must be the red wine. And because of that, they say the Americans don't drink red wine. Heart disease, there's an increase of heart disease here, but less there, therefore, it got to be with the wine. So they basically banked on this flawed scientific notion, and they sold, millions in terms of the red wine, subhanAllah. The point I'm making over here is that just because it's been legal, it's been decriminalized and legalized in Canada, does not mean that it's not harmful to your health. The nature of the substance would not shift or change simply on account of legislation being put forth. That's aside from that point altogether. So, knowing this, brothers and sisters, we have one of 2 approaches, okay? The first is the knee-jerk reaction, which is دَعْ مَا يَرِيبُكَ إِلَى مَا لَا يَرِيبُكَ. Put aside that which you're doubtful in. If someone says, I don't believe any of the research papers, I'll wait down the road to see what comes out. Okay. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, abandon, leave it all aside until things become more clear. Because why? Here we're looking out for your health. This is one of this hadith here specifically speaks of the importance of preserving your mind and your body. Sharia, like I said, is designed to protect those 5 primary objectives. So Rasulullah tells us here, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that if you're fully unaware or are unsure of the nature of this substance, the best thing for you, in order to preserve your health, your well-being, your intellect, your mind, pull away from it and just leave it all together, abandon that substance. That's the first approach. The second approach is a more direct approach. In light of the study, we can say, well, here before me I have significant research that would indicate to me that this is harmful to your health. We have the hadith I mentioned first. Rasulullah said, La dar wa la dirar. Do not harm yourself or allow harm to extend to others. We have the mechanism of qiyas, which can be used quite successfully here, and it would then indicate that we should avoid and pull away from these substances. We have the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that I mentioned, the 3rd one and the 4th one, that speak of the prohibition of everything that slows you down. Now, if someone takes a lot of weed, we don't say that they've gone into a frenzy. They're stoned, right? When you say someone is stoned, what does that mean? I mean, right now, what do you understand? He's stoned. What do you get from that? Is he running around and their friends are sitting down calm and comfortable and just basically spaced out, right? That's what it means, basically. A person is stoned, he's unaware of what's going around him, he's just really slowed down and whatnot, subhanAllah. So Rasulullah forbade everything that would interfere with the normal function of the body. Speeding it up or slowing it down, it's all haram. Here it says, naha, and the word naha in terms of the Sharia is a prohibition, meaning that this is haram then. Avoid that substance. So this covers essentially the first aspect of marijuana or cannabis. So we have, of course, we can break marijuana, cannabis into three categories. We have the first, what we spoke of right now, recreational marijuana use. Okay. What I've covered right now is in light of that aspect. We have the medicinal aspect of it. Then we have the industrial aspect of marijuana. Now the industrial is simple. It's basically in reference to hemp and the fibers that are the after, you can say the leftovers. So when whatever's taken is taken, the fibers that remain, they're used. It's an amazing thing. You look at the uses of that hemp and whatnot, they say it can be used down to its basic fibers. Everything can be used in a way that is subhanAllah amazing. So they make clothes, they make whatever else. You see hemp products out there, that's not haram to use. It's okay because it no longer is intoxicating. There's no such thing there. It's been removed, it's been pulled out. Similar to you eating a poppy seed bun, for example. Just because you ate the bun does not mean you're becoming drunk or something of the sort. It's lawful. Although that was from that plant, it's now changed. It's been, in a way, altered in that sense. So the industrial is not an issue. The issue that stands out, though, is the medicinal aspect. Now we have very strong opinions here. People say that it's haram, it should be taken the ruling of the recreational marijuana, haram, all right, do not take it, do not use it. But now, with the medicinal aspect of marijuana, before we get into it itself, let's look at any medication that you take. Advil, Tylenol, pain-killing medications essentially, right? Some of them are far worse, of course, than Tylenol and Advil. They'll basically make you addicted. I mean, talking about the OxyContin and the Oxycodone and whatnot, those medications that are pure chemicals essentially. You're taking them to kill pain. If you take too much of them, what happens? You form a dependence upon that, and then that forms a habit. You're addicted to those medications, and they're talking about the dangers of that addiction, subhanAllah. So that would also have side effects. It harms your body in different ways. So they prescribe that medicine. Although it's so harmful for your body, they prescribe it in measured amounts, certain doses, not to be exceeded, not to be taken beyond. And when you go for a refill, they'll make sure that you have, let's say you come for a refill the next day. They give you enough for whatever, a month, and you come the next day for a refill. They're not going to give you that refill because you're an addict. Who knows what you're doing with that? They will not give you a refill until that time passes, you go back for the next one, and so on and so forth. So they're given in measured doses and amounts. If exceeded, it will be harmful, definitely. But it's taken to basically address a pain within the body. Remember I told you in the beginning, the Sharia is designed to protect and preserve those five. Body, mind, the wealth, the children, the family, and whatnot, those five. So we have over here, the preservation of the body. If you're in pain, and there is what you call a doctor who has prescribed and said, you know what, you're in a situation where he's assessed you, and they say, you know, you are in a situation where you can take this medication, the CBD pills, whatever else, derived from that will benefit you, that will, basically avail you in your situation. You can take this. There's no side effects or little side effects compared to those other medications. So here, under strict and specific, you can say, medical advice, you're taking those medications, and there is a benefit to that. So they're taken in certain specific doses. So that's the hukum here would change and shift. It's not the same as recreational because this is taken to address something within the body. Unlike recreational, which is taken for the sake of fun, to have a good time and whatnot. Okay? So the hukum would change in relation to that. But don't take this as an open thing for yourself to go and get a medicinal marijuana permit. No. This is to be taken only, as I said, in light of the advice and instruction given by a professional. So the problem is, Sheikh, can I take this? I'm not the one to ask. I cannot give you that permission. It's not for me. You got to go to a qualified medical practitioner who knows your condition, who knows your case, who knows that medicine, knows your history. And if he sees after all of that, that yes, this is an option for you, then that's your business. Don't come to the Sheikh and say, Sheikh, this is one option, can I take it? The Sheikh is not a doctor. He cannot prescribe medications. He shouldn't. It's wrong. So, like I said, this is a field where the Sharia intersects with the medical and the scientific aspects. So we have to look at it in light of that as one approach. Finally, brothers and sisters, I'm going to share with you two narrations. These narrations, hopefully, inshallah, they'll leave you, I guess, in a way, not too open to that idea of taking marijuana. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. That's my goal tonight. Actually, there's three things not. So let me share the first narration. It states, the first one, this is Sahih in Sunan Abi Dawud and other sources, that Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma were sitting with other companions after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And they were discussing among themselves أعظم الكبائر. They were discussing among themselves the most severe and the worst of all major sins. What was it? What is it? فَلَمْ يَكُنْ عِنْدَهُمْ فِيهَا عِلْمٍ. None of those companions, including Abu Bakr and Umar, had sure knowledge as to what this actually was. They were discussing and debating among themselves. So they sent one of the companions who were there to Abdullah bin Amr. And that companion said, أَرْسَلُونِي لِأَسْأَلَهُ. They sent me to ask Abdullah bin Amr radiallahu anhuma, because Abdullah bin Amr was among the few companions who actually documented and wrote down the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he had, like you can say, an encyclopedia of hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he asked him, what is the worst, the gravest major sin? And he responded to him, shurbul khamr, or to ingest an intoxicant. So that Sahabi went back to Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma, and he informed them of what Abdullah bin Amr said, and they were shocked. Come on, ingesting alcohol? So they all got up. Abu Bakr, Umar, and all of the companions got up, and they approached Abdullah bin Amr radiallahu anhuma, and they asked him, what is the proof for your statement? You said ingesting an intoxicant. What's the proof for that? He said, here, let me give you the hadith. And he mentioned the story that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had mentioned. This is about the previous nations, a king who, captured an individual who was passing by his palace or through his lands, and he gave him the choice to either consume an intoxicant, or to kill someone, to fornicate, or to eat khanzir, to eat pork, or that they would kill him if he chooses none of the above. So that person thought to himself that the easiest way out of this was to consume that intoxicant. He drank it, thereafter lost his mind. It was a very strong mix apparently. He did everything that they wanted him to do. Every haram that they had indicated, he did it, subhanAllah. So, I think this is dead. Yeah, low battery. Okay, so anyways. So we have over here, the narration then says that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that ما من أحد يشربها فتقبل له صلاة 40 ليلة. No one shall ingest an intoxicant except that their prayers would not be accepted for 40 days. Yani 200 prayers would not be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They still must pray them, but there's no reward for them. ولا يموت وفي مثانته منه شيء إلا حرمت بها دخول الجنة. And if he dies, while this remains in his system, he would not be granted entry into Jannah. فإن مات في 40 ليلة مات ميتة جاهلية. And if he dies within the 40-day period, he would die as though a death in the pre-Islamic era. So this is talking about intoxicants. And it's really scary because let's say down the road more evidence comes up and we can truly, basically decisively label this as an intoxicant. This hadith would then apply entirely to that substance we're talking about, because the hukum here is not tied in with one substance, not with an alcohol, whiskey or rum, but rather anything labeled as an intoxicant, which is
anything that would impair your judgment, cloud your mind, and basically not make you able to function as you would without that substance. Okay? That's the first hadith. The second hadith we have here, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, كُلُّ مُخَمِّرٍ خَمْرٍ. Everything that clouds your judgment, impairs your mind, is considered khamr. Okay? Khamr here, yani anything that clouds your mind is considered khamr, an intoxicant, in terms of the hukum. وَكُلُّ مُسْكِرٍ حَرَامٍ. And everything that intoxicates you is then considered haram. Whoever consumes an intoxicant, it says here, بُخِصَتْ صَلَاتُهُ أَرْبَعِينَ صَبَاحًا. Prayers would not be accepted for 40 days. فَإِن تَابَ تَابَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ. But if he repents to Allah, Allah would then forgive him. So these narrations and many other like them would then apply to this topic. It's very scary, subhanAllah. Lastly, brothers and sisters, we have over here, doing research on the topic of cannabis. And I was looking specifically at what the ulama had mentioned about this, because I know you're not going to find Abu Hanifa or Malik or Shafi'i or Ahmad ibn Hanbal speaking about cannabis the way that we're speaking about it right now, as it was not an issue back then. But there are scholars who looked into it, and specifically this one over here in a book called Marqat al-Su'ud, which is for Imam al-Suyuti rahimahullah. He mentioned that a person from Bilad al-Ajam, yani the non-Arab lands, and from Persia and beyond, they had come to the ulama in Al-Qahira, in Cairo, Egypt. And they asked the scholars there for a proof of the prohibition of cannabis. And the scholars there, they got together and they had a majlis. Look, subhanAllah, they got together, they discussed the issue to the best of their knowledge. And here Al-Hafidh Al-Iraqi, who's well known, a scholar of hadith and renowned alim of that era, he said that it can be prohibited in light of the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that kullu mufattirin haram, that everything that would slow your body down would then be considered haram. So that's one, you can say, discussion, and you'll find many of them here and there. They're nothing, like I said, mainstream, but you'll find these opinions for ulama mentioned with the frameworks of the hadith. Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi was another. And he said that, and they call this plant cannabis, not always by al-qanab al-hindi or al-qanab, it's called likewise al-hashisha. Al-hashisha here are, intoxicating plants, and specifically in relation to cannabis itself, because that was present at that time, and it was documented with that same name, al-qanab. So it says over here that this plant, it first appeared, became popularized among the people and became more of an epidemic after the Mongol, you can say, kingdom or empire became apparent and strong and took root in the Muslim lands. That's when this became more of a widely used substance. And he goes on to say about the danger of this plant. وَهِيَ مِنْ أَعْظَمِ الْمُنْكَرَاتِ. It's among the worst things a person can become addicted to, one of the worst sins. وَهِيَ شَرٌّ مِنَ الْخَمْرِ مِنْ بَعْضِ الْوُجُوهِ. He said it is worse than alcohol from some perspectives or aspects. The reason that with alcohol, this is something you drink, you'll become drunk, haram, avoid it. Whereas here, people tell you it's natural, it's just a plant, nothing wrong with it. So he said from some perspectives, in light of some of the aspects of this and that, this cannabis may be worse than, or hashisha here may be worse than the alcohol. He said over here, at times, he said it's worse. He mentioned some of the other reasons. لأنها تورث نشأة ولذة وطربا. It also brings about within a person, a sense of, energy, where they want to enjoy themselves and they dismiss everything around them. Subhanallah. And he mentioned over here, وإنما لم يتكلم فيها الأئمة الأربعة لأنها لم تكن في زمنهم. He said, as for what people might say, how come the Imams, the four, did not speak about it? He said, because it was not an issue back during their times. Rahimahumullah ajma'in. So in short, brothers and sisters, this is the topic itself. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. وَجَزَاكُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا.